Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Outdoors Hiking Bob podcast. I am your host, Hiking Bob Falcone. You can find me on my website at hikingbob.com, which has links to my social media, my other podcast, my photography website. You can also help support this podcast. There's all kinds of links, everything right there at hikingbob.com. And if you have a question or a comment, feel free to drop me an email. You can do that from the contact me link on my website. So enough of that stuff. Today, we're here actually to talk about another participant in the 2023 Give campaign. Teri Peisner here from the Friends of Monument Valley Park. Teri, we've had you on before, so I'm glad to have you back. You guys are doing really great stuff in Monument Valley Park. So we had some pretty big developments there in this past year. So tell us a little bit about what happened this past year over in the park.
Well, right. The city actually restored Shadow Lake, which is the pond in the southern half of the park. It's near the swimming pool. And that project actually cost $1.3 million. And they got that money from the Tabor retention that was approved back in 2019. But we were responsible for providing them with the funds for the repair of this historic stonework around the park, around the pond. Right. We actually received a grant from Lyda Hill Philanthropies back in 2021. They gave $400,000 to the Parks Department on our behalf. And so they were able to use that money to repair the historic retaining wall that's on the east side of that pond. And that was built in the late 1930s by the WPA after the Memorial Day flood of 1935. And then also our mason also restored all the original rock around the perimeter of the lake. So, what the city did is they excavated, they had drained the pond several years ago. And I know people were very upset by that and wondered what was going to happen.
It was just a big pit.
That because, what'd you say?
It was just a big pit there without.
It was a big pit and it was very unsightly. Yeah. People, were very unhappy with it. But the problem was it was leaking water and they were constantly having to refill it. So what they needed to do was kind of redig out the area. And then they installed a liner and then they attached this liner to a concrete footer that they put all around the lake. And then that concrete footer was what the mason covered with the original stones. And they found all the stones like in the dried lake bed, and they didn't even have to purchase any new stones for that. So yeah, and they re-landscaped the area. They reshaped the little island in the middle, put new landscaping on that. And it's just, I don't know if you've been there. I'm sure you've been there, Bob. But yeah, it's a really lovely area now with walkways around it and benches.
So if I recall from past podcasts that we've done, one of the big things you guys have been working on at the Friends Group there is restoring a lot of that stonework, not just there at that pond, but all around the park. So tell us how that's been going.
Yeah, so that's been going great. We started this project back in 2011, and this is actually what we raised money for in the Give campaign, is the repair and preservation of the historic stonework. And since 2011, we have repaired 16 different stone features, and that actually translates into $900,000 worth of work. Whoa. So we have raised, through the Give campaign and then also state historical fund grants, we have repaired $500,000 worth. And then in 2021, I mentioned before, we received a $400,000 grant. It was given directly to the Parks Department, but earmarked for our stonework repair projects. So it was given on our behalf to the Parks Department.
That's great. So
yeah,
that one of the things I love about Colorado Springs, especially downtown, is a lot of that old stonework.
Yeah,
that you see around town, and not only in Monument Valley Park, North Cheyenne Canyon Park, the old bridges have a lot of stonework. And when they redid those bridges, part of the thing was they wanted that old stone to be reused.
Exactly.
On the new bridges, and they've done that there. So there's a lot of emphasis, which I love, in restoring that old look and feel.
Yes.
Of the city,
exactly.
From going back to almost its origination, back in the 1900s and stuff.
Exactly. And when we get state historical fund grants, of course, we have to recreate the original as much as possible and use the original materials. And so we have worked mainly with one mason who's very experienced in historic masonry. And, we also have an engineering group out of Boulder, and they will actually do an analysis of the mortar so they know what the composition is. And then the mason matches that. And then when he applies it, he has to match the color of the original mortar, the texture, the width, and the depth. So it's all very carefully done to try to match what it was historically.
I was going to ask you if they even use the original mortar composition, and they do. That's actually pretty.
I think they
incredible.
do. I mean, I think maybe I don't know what I want to say. They modernize it. I mean, they kind of match the aggregate, the small stones in it. I don't know if it's an exact match, but when you look at it, the appearance is the exact match.
They may not be able to get some of the stuff they used back then.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe,
exactly.
Maybe out of necessity, they can't do 100%. But I mean, even the fact that they want to go into that level of detail.
Yeah.
I mean, if it were me, I'd be at Home Depot buying whatever and just slapping stuff on there. And it would not look nearly as good as the work you're helping get done there. Yeah. I think it's safe to say, regardless of whether it was Tabor refund or a grant, it's probably pretty safe to say a lot of this stuff wouldn't be happening if your group wasn't A, raising money to get it done, and B, kicking people in the butt, or maybe saying, hey, we need to fix this, when it may not be on anybody's pressing radar unless somebody's pushing a button someplace. Is that
exactly
fair analysis?
Right, because the Parks Department has such a huge backlog of capital improvement projects. Sure. I think I don't know if it's still this. I read at one point it was like 270 million.
It's still about that.
Yes. And so it's, they really didn't have the money to maintain that stonework in the park. And so for years and years, it just, slowly deteriorated. I mean, when we took on this project, there's the Columbia Street entrance, which is a 400-foot long entrance just north of Uinta, where Columbia Street dead ends into the park. I mean, there's huge cracks, there's missing stones, vegetation growing through the stones. And actually the retaining walls were leaning so much that our engineers really felt that they were in danger of collapse. And people walk through that entryway every day. I mean, it really posed a threat to their safety. So yeah, I do think that the Parks Department would never have been able to do this unless we had started this project back in 2011. And so it's been, I think we're really proud. I mean, we are an all volunteer friends group. Sure. And to have done that much work in the park is something that we're just really, really proud of. And, really thankful to all of our Give donors who have, given us the money, and we have used that money mainly as, the matching funds when we apply for grants, because we have to come up with at least 25% of the project funds.
So like a lot of other groups, you're able to use the funds that you get from Give donors to really multiply that.
Yes,
with
exactly.
finding all these grants. So you get, and I'm just going to pull a number out of the hat, $50,000. And with some creative work and finding the right grant, you can turn that into, like you said, 25%. You can turn it into a $200,000.
Exactly. And we have done that. Yeah. I mean, like repairing the Columbia Street entrance, I think was like close to $200,000. So that's exactly right. We've always, I always was told, the State Historical Fund looks more favorably if you put even more than 25%. So we give about 30%, and then, we get the rest of the money from the State Historical Fund. So that, it's been wonderful to be able to multiply the gifts from Give into big, huge projects, really.
When I walk my dog through Monument Valley Park, and he loves it there because it's wide and, it's easy. And like I was telling you before we started here, he's got a little knee injury, so he likes easy stuff right now. And I like easy stuff for him. There's along the path there's those steps that go up and then they lead to like a street, like there's a little pathway to a street or something like that. And underneath of the steps, there's like little insets, I guess, are you guys working on those? Is that part of your project?
Well, so I think that what you're describing is the Columbia Street entrance.
Is that what I'm talking
about? The archway and the bench. So we did repair all that in 2017. And then even in 2020, we went back because when we did the original grant, we didn't realize that it was a stone floor on the upper level of that entryway. It was covered with dirt. Yeah. And so we hadn't asked for enough money, and it wasn't part of the scope of our project. So we actually had to include that in a future project. So we've worked on that entrance twice. I mean, part of the issue too is that the vegetation gets so overgrown year after year. So in the summer, we organize cleanups, and our board member in charge of the cleanups, Rob Harrison, tries to go there every summer and cut back the vegetation. I mean, that's just even another thing the Parks Department doesn't seem to have the money for, is to keep up with the overgrowth, throughout the park, and especially near these stone structures.
And when we've had a wet season like we've had this past summer, it is really difficult. I mean, trails were getting overgrown, and they were working as fast as they could to clear them, but there's only so many people and so much time to get that kind of stuff done.
Right, it is. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
There's a lot of stone structures in that whole stretch of the park. Where are you at with getting, I'm assuming you're trying to get them all done. Where are you at with getting everything done? Do you still have a bunch left to do? Where you guys
Well,
at with
I'd say we are like probably 2/3 done. When we started this project, what the State Historical Fund requires is like an assessment of the entire project. And so our historic preservation architect and our engineer did identify 40 different stone structures in the park. That doesn't mean we're going to do all of them. I mean, some of them are just tree wells and small things that we're not going to be able to do. But like I said, we've done 16. We've completed our top 10 priority projects that we identified back in the beginning. But there are 2 large projects that we're considering right now. And as I had mentioned to you before, we're meeting with the Parks Department to determine which one we want to go forward with. And one of them is actually what I'm calling the embankment wall behind Duck Lake. And that's the other pond in the southern half. It's right behind the Van Brigel building. And the Parks Department has also drained that pond. So it's really kind of, it's not attractive at all right there. So it's drained, and they cut down some willow trees, and they cut down a lot of vegetation behind that pond. And what happened was they exposed that an embankment wall that goes up to the main trail, and it was like a stone laid embankment wall. And I honestly didn't even know it was there. It was so hidden by overgrown vegetation. So that is probably the project we're going to work on. And our mason has estimated that it would take $100,000 to repair that wall. And that doesn't include like paying a landscape company or a tree care company to come and pull out like all the stumps and vegetation that's in that wall. And the other option we're thinking about is there's a baseball stadium in the southern half, and it was built in 1917. Like, I think it's beyond. Is it beyond the pool? I think it's, it's in that area near the pool.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about there. Yeah.
Yeah. And it is in really rough shape. I mean, the stonework is actually pretty good, but the concrete bleachers are so deteriorated. They're cracked, they're peeling, there's holes. I mean, they're really unusable. So that's another thing that we've talked about taking on as our next project.
Cool.
So yeah.
And we're talking some serious money there. So you definitely got some help from the Give folks on this one.
Yeah, that one is at least $100,000. It's probably more than that, because when I've talked with Jake Butterfield, who's the construction manager from the Parks Department that we work with, I mean, he has talked about really kind of pulling the bleachers out and redoing the rebar, the metal structures underneath the concrete. So that could be a pretty expensive project.
Wow. So you really need some help from Give donors this year to get.
We
now
do.
You've got some really big projects. Duck Lake looks like it's going to be pretty pricey. That baseball, that old baseball field is going to be pretty pricey. So you really need some help.
Yeah, we absolutely
with the Give donors here.
Yeah, these projects are, both of them together are well over $200,000. So yeah, we definitely need some money to get those projects going. And, and we'd like to do that wall at Duck Lake, at the same time that the city is restoring that pond. Just like they did with Shadow Lake, we were able to get that stonework repaired as part of their overall project.
Sure, it makes sense to do everything all at the same time.
Right, and, absolutely. To do it in conjunction and have it all done at the same time would be great.
I have not been there in a little while, so I didn't realize they drained Duck Lake. And my dog loves Duck Lake because he wants to chase the ducks in the gates.
The ducks.
Yes. It's fortunately they have a leash law, and I have him leashed, so he's not chasing them all over the place. But he loves
good for
going
you
there.
For having your dog on the leash.
Absolutely. But he's always out there going, I want to go chase the ducks.
Yeah, exactly.
I remind him the ducks are just going to make him look stupid because they're going to fly away, but he doesn't always get it. He's a dog. Teri, you guys are doing some great stuff. Monument Valley Park is a true gem, and I don't know if enough people get down there to see it. You got the pickleball courts down there, and you've got this old baseball field and that lovely stonework. I usually come in because I live north of there, so I come in on Fontanero
Okay.
on the east side, and I park down there and we walk down, and there's the playground there, and then there's those really lovely curved walls in the landscaping there, and then there's a
Yep.
tunnel that goes under. I just love that old, and you don't see that much in parks anymore, but I just love that. And it doesn't really go anywhere. I'm sure it's retaining walls, but they just really are nice. That
Yeah.
stuff,
You
and
know,
you
and
guys are helping with that stuff.
yes, and we did. I know which one you're talking about. You're
Yeah.
talking about the what we call and is called the serpentine wall.
Yes, that's a
Is
great
that
name.
beautiful curving wall? And what is interesting about that, it really doesn't serve a purpose as a retaining wall. It really just was put there to look beautiful.
Succeeded.
Thank you. Yes, it did. And what our architect calls it, it's like a folly. You know, they just put it there to have it there and for people to admire and be aesthetically pleasing. So yeah, it's been great. So yeah, so we repaired that a couple years ago. And then just recently with that Lyda Hill Foundation grant, we repaired the main trail bridge that you walk under. Well, you know, obviously it goes on the north-south path, but you can walk under it out to out to Monument Creek, because one of the abutment walls was leaning quite a bit and again, posing a danger to the public safety. So they repaired that abutment wall. And then there was a small bridge near there, a WPA bridge that one span, the western span, was totally demolished. I don't know. It looked like a vehicle hit it. And I hate to say it, it might have been a Parks vehicle because there are not supposed to be any vehicles in
That doesn't mean they're not down there.
That's true.
Yeah.
And but also when you come in at that Fontanero entrance, I think one of the most unique things in the park is the geologic column, which, is right. If you come down that path, it's right to the right. And that is original to the park's opening. I mean, that was built in 1907.
Wow.
And, General Palmer and his engineer, I think it was actually proposed by his engineer, Edmund Van Diest, to build this to represent the geologic layers in the Pikes Peak region. And originally it even had a waterfall going beside it. And there are ditches that would take it on out. There used to be a lake in that area too, and then out to the creek. So it's really a unique area. And Boddington soccer field was a reservoir. And so it was fed by the El Paso Canal. So that's where they got the water to go down in this man-made waterfall beside the column. So it's really a unique area.
I always wondered why that soccer field was down at a boulder. I had no idea that was a reservoir. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Now that I think about it, like, duh, it makes sense. But I had no idea that was actually, I was like, why is that down there in this bowl?
And I don't even know that I thought about it, but yes, that's why. So it's interesting.
Makes complete sense. And it's kind of a neat little oasis down in there. And the trail goes all the way around it. You can walk. I've actually, way back when, probably 20 some odd years ago, when there was a moose that was hanging around.
Right.
I actually encountered that moose in Boddington Field one morning.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, way back. I mean, what was that, 20 years ago? That moose was running around and hung around Monument Valley Park for a week, I think, before it finally went points north. But actually encountered it over there in the field at one point. Like, well, this is special. There's a moose in here. Teri, you guys are doing great stuff. I mean, and what I like is, I focused a lot on this podcast with, building trails and maintenance of trails, which is all obviously valuable stuff. I like that you're working on the history part of this, and that is by repairing these stone structures that obviously, as you found out, you didn't even know there was some stone in some of these places, like
right.
as a base of this. You're restoring these old things that bring back the character of the city, and I really like that you guys are working on that, because it is so much fun to see those old structures there. I really enjoy that it's not all, pre-stressed concrete and steel I-beams and stuff. It is really, and it may be under there, but it's still attractive to look at the old stonework. I really appreciate the work you guys are doing down there. It's great stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I just love historic preservation. I have loved working on this project. It's been great. I just think It really, it connects us to the past. It gives a sense of community.
Sure.
It takes us back to the founder of our city, General Palmer, and why he built this. I mean, there's even a quote we use, like he built it for future generations. And here we are, the future generations really enjoying it and appreciating it.
And how long it's all lasted. Obviously everything needs some work. Teri, how can people find you guys? You have a website, Facebook, social media? How can people find out more about you?
Yes, we do. So we're at www.fmvp.net. That's our website. And we're on Facebook, just Friends of Monument Valley Park. You can, search for that. And we're also on Instagram. We're on all those social media outlets. And and you can also join. We have a membership, and if you give to us in the Give campaign, you get a complimentary 1-year membership. Or you can just join separately. It's like a 1-year membership is $25, 5 years is $100, and then we have lifetime memberships for $200.
Oh, wow.
So we really.
I'm excited about the work you guys are doing. I'm really excited with the work you've helped get done with the city and reopening that pond and getting that work. The work you've got planned, expensive stuff, but it's going to be gorgeous. I know it's just going to be absolutely beautiful to see. And I really appreciate the detail you're getting. You're getting the right people to do the work.
Yeah.
So it looked, like I said, if I did it, it would look exactly like I did it.
Yeah. I mean,
we've
really been fortunate, to work with the professionals that we have. As I said, it's Terry Alexander with Stonecraft, and he does, historic preservation work on masonry throughout the state. And then Donald Harvey with Atkinson Nolan, a structural engineering firm out of Boulder. And they actually do work worldwide on masonry. Wow. They've actually done the statues on Easter Island. So, I mean, we have like top-notch experts.
Holy cow.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that amazing?
the side note, one of my bucket list places to go is Easter Island.
Yeah.
I'll have to go there and say, I know the guy did that. I've heard of the guy who did this. I don't know him, but I know
right.
Well, Teri, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Best of luck on the Give campaign. To all of you listening, this isn't trail work, which is a lot of what we talk about, but this is really important stuff to preserve the history of the city and the look and feel. And as you mentioned, Teri, General Palmer's image, what he wanted the city to look like. So
right. And really it was like
stuff.
It was his gift to the people of Colorado Springs, Monument Valley Park, as well as other parks that he gave to the
Absolutely. People. So let's help the Friends of Monument Valley Park do more of this great work. Donate to them, and you heard Teri, they're great at getting a little bit of money and making it into a whole lot of money. But now they need a whole lot of money to make it into a bigger whole lot of money. So give them a hand with this, and donate to. Through the Give campaign till the end of the month for the Friends of Monument Valley Park. Teri, thanks a lot for being on the podcast.
No, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And everybody, thanks for listening to the Outdoors with Hiking Bob podcast.